I'm your host, Marsha Florence for Just Ask Talk Show. Today, ladies and gentlemen, is a special edition for us. We're partnering with Southeast Michigan Collaborative, and the show today will be Caregivers on the Frontline Public Forum. Please enjoy the first half of a three-part series.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Stephen Henderson, host of American Black Journal and a regular contributor to One Detroit, both of which appear on Detroit Public Television. This evening, it's my privilege to serve as moderator of the Caregivers on the Frontlines Public Forum. We're going to talk to caregivers, journalists, and experts in the field about the many challenges that are faced by those providing care for older adults, from physical burdens and economic hardships to things like loneliness and depression. This, of course, can be really difficult work, but it's crucial and it's necessary for the well-being of families and for our community. If you think about the expanding number of people who find themselves in this position, having to care for an aging relative, having to figure out how all of that works, you know how urgent an issue this is. But let's think for just a second about what that means to us as a culture. The idea that in many cases, what you're doing is trying to make the last years or months, or maybe even weeks of somebody's life more comfortable, safe, and surrounded by dignity. It is one of the highest callings, I think, that exist. And the truth is that in this country, we're not doing very well on that count. We are not supporting the people who provide this care, and we are not supporting the people who need it. Now, this is the first Michigan Public Forum of the New York and Michigan Solutions Journalism Collaborative, which consists of more than 30 media, academic, and community organizations. Initially, that collaborative has decided to focus its efforts on the critical issue of caregiving. As the name implies, the Coalition of Journalists not only covers problems and concerns related to caregiving, but it also reports on potential solutions to these challenges. We want tonight's discussion to be interactive as well. So please, if you have a question, you can enter it or your personal experiences into the comments section of our Zoom broadcast, and then we will relay them to our panelists. We would also like to hear your ideas on issues we should be covering and stories we should be telling about caregivers, so include those as well. This forum is being produced in collaboration with Strides for Seniors, an annual month-long series of activities that celebrates Detroit's neighborhood senior centers. It's organized by Detroit Area Agency on Aging, the Detroit Parks and Recreation Department, and St. Patrick Senior Center. So let's get started. My first guests represent two of those senior centers. Satrice Coleman-Betts is Executive Director of St. Patrick's Senior Center, and Vincent Telford is President and CEO of the Hannon Center here in Detroit. Satrice and Vincent, welcome to the program.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So let's start here. I know that senior centers in Metro Detroit serve tens of thousands of older adults every year, but I still think a lot of people are unaware of their programs and their services and who's eligible to use them. So could each of you tell us about the mission of your centers and the work that they do? Satrice, I'll start with you.
Well, our center is open to individuals who are 55 and older. And we have a myriad of services that serve as a social outlet and also a resource center for older adults. They can do anything from congregate meals to activities, dancing, transportation, caregiver training, just a variety of services.
Vincent?
Yeah, well, we've been around for 96 years. And like Satrice, we offer a variety of services to older adults. But I would say that one of the things that's really at the heart of our service is what we call creative aging. We believe that this robust arts training with seniors is a great way to help them to learn, connect with other seniors or other members of their tribe and create. And then we also offer social work services, anywhere from case management, counseling, as well as we offer an adult day program for seniors living with dementia.
So I am sure that in both of your centers, the pandemic has changed the way you approach the work, has changed the set of needs that people maybe are showing up at the centers with. I'd love both of you to talk about how you adapted to this health crisis and talk about whether things maybe are beginning to return to normal. Vincent, I'll start with you this time.
Yeah, I don't know that we've returned to normal, but certainly we had to do a pivot with this. I think the biggest issue was with a lot of our participants, they may not have had the ready connection to broadband. So it's helping people to get connected through broadband. But when that wasn't available, one of the things that we did right off the bat was we began connecting to people via telephone. We had this huge sort of telephone reassurance line where we're working with seniors no matter what they need, kind of meeting them wherever their needs are. And we think that this is something, this sort of virtual and telephone programming is something that we will continue moving forward. And so we're kind of moved into this phase now of sort of a mix of in-person and virtual. And our in-person programming right now is primarily our adult day program, where our caregivers are, they are just very grateful that this is available to them, because you can imagine it really put families under a tremendous amount of stress over the last year and a half.
Satrice, what's going on in your center since the pandemic started?
Well, the pandemic was definitely a challenge. We decided right at the beginning that we weren't going to stop the services. We also began wellness checks. I think we did the first few months over 2,000 wellness checks. We decided to take the services where the people are. So we did a lot of services outside our walls, servicing basic needs. So delivering groceries, providing PPE, taking it to their homes. And we also have been able to expand services outside. So a lot of our inside classes and our Congress meals are outside, curbside meals, picnic in our park area. You come to our building, there's hustle dancing outside 5 days a week. Yoga, Tai Chi is like a big party outside every single day. And so that has been great. We do also have some virtual activities. So we're trying to do it in person outside, virtual, and taking things to their homes as they need it.
So, of course, this forum is about caregiving and caregivers, and we want to focus now on some of the programs and services that each of you provide for caregivers to help them take better care of themselves and of their loved ones. But first, let's watch a short clip from a report that was produced by Urban Aging News and Detroit Public Television on a respite care program at the Hannon Center.
Here at the Hannon Center in Detroit, a program called Daybreak offers older adults with dementia a chance to socialize and take part in activities that stimulate their minds. For family caregivers, Daybreak provides a much-needed short-term break to focus on their own needs and obligations.
Respite care for the caregiver as well as the person who's living with dementia is just absolutely vital. One of the reasons why it's so vital is that it often, the person who is taking care or supporting that other person are oftentimes sicker than the person that they're trying to help. Or they're neglecting their own health in the process.
As a caregiver, it helps me because they do things with my mom that I don't do. Like, we do walking and she does like work around the house. But as far as the speech and game playing and stuff like that, I don't do that at home. She wants someone else to talk to besides me. She gets tired of hearing my voice, and then she's in her own communities when she's there. They get each other. I can't fully understand what she is going through, but other people that has dementia fully understand each other. And that is, that's a blessing right there. And also it gives me a chance to get a little breather.
Okay, so Vincent, first of all, I love the name that we're using here, respite care. The idea of a respite from the work and the hardship of caregiving. But I wonder if you could tell us a little more about this respite care program that you offer and why it's so important.
Yeah, we call it daybreak because we have a lot of care partners who either are working or they could just be a spouse that's at home that has been with the person living with dementia for 24/7, and they just need a break during the day. And sometimes it's just a few hours, sometimes it could be 5 days a week. But at the end of the day, they have their needs that they have to take care of, and it helps to improve that relationship between the care partner and the person that they're caring for. Our services are very affordable. It's as little as $5 an hour. And I would say that since we reopened, we were closed up until April. And when we reopened, I mean, this the number of caregivers that have been calling us, and particularly I saw that that little recording on TV. They've been asking about how do we get into daybreak because they need this time for just a little bit of space is what we're trying to give them.
So, Therese, I know that a lot of people find themselves in these positions very suddenly, and there isn't a lot of support for them to even know what they're supposed to do. But the St. Patrick Center is conducting training programs to help them make what can be a really difficult adjustment. Talk about what those training programs look like.
We have two training programs, and like you said, a lot of caregivers are ill prepared. It's just things sometimes happen all of a sudden, or sometimes you don't even realize you're a caregiver, and that comes into play. But two of our courses are Creating Confident Caregivers, which is a caregiver training program for individuals and caregivers who are the care recipient is living at home with dementia. It is a 6-week program, 2 hours a week, and it's to give them skills to be able to cope, to let them know that they're not alone, to help give them skills and recognize the changes that happen during the process of dementia. The other program is called Powerful Tools for Caregivers. That program does not require the person to have dementia. It's to give them skills so they can develop their self-confidence, learn resources, just master the caregiver program. And it's very stressful on many occasions. So those programs are very needed. They're small groups and it lets you develop a support system.
Hmm. So it seems to me that even though these programs are geared toward people who are in this situation and trying to figure out how to manage it, increasingly, this is something that maybe everyone ought to know at least a little bit about, if not at least where to get the resources to be able to do, because so many people find themselves in this situation unexpectedly. I wonder what kind of outreach is happening to I guess just the general public, but also what kind of resources do we maybe need to make sure that more people understand how this works and where they can get help once it actually happens to them. Vincent, how often are you finding that people are reaching out to you before they actually need the help taking care of someone?
Most of the time that they don't. Most of the people don't realize they need the help until they are knee deep into the situation. And one of the things that we're trying to do is certainly meet a population where they're not poor enough to qualify for Medicaid, but they make they make too much money to qualify for Medicaid, but they don't make enough money to be able to put their loved one in like an assisted living or long-term memory care. And so what we're trying to do is to meet those individuals who, again, just need some hours. And we try to reach out to them through our Facebook page. We've sent out mailers. As I said, the DPTV certainly really helped out a lot. But as people become aware of it and they realize their situation, because sometimes caregivers don't even realize that they're caregivers. That's another sort of phenomena here. And then when they realize and they can see themselves in the advertising or in the stories, they then begin to reach out to us.
So I know we're in the midst of a month-long event to celebrate Detroit's neighborhood senior centers and educate the community about the kinds of things that your centers offer. So Therese, tell us a little more about Stride for Seniors.
Stride for Seniors is one of my wonderful favorite events, because it requires, and it's an engagement partnership between multiple senior centers, and it allows us to let the community know what we do best, and is take care of older adults. And we all support one another with making individuals aware of what resources are available to celebrate aging, that we'll all be here one day, and that those resources are there, that it just helps you find what's available in the community.
Yeah. So we do have a question from our audience. Someone says, what are some resources for families who live outside of the large cities who are looking for places for their loved ones? Is this a good network that may exist outside Detroit in the suburbs as well? I'm not sure if you guys know about that, but go ahead.
Yes, there. Go ahead, Satrice.
I would suggest that they contact their local area agencies on aging. They're a great resource. Detroit has DAAA, Detroit Areas on Aging. You have 1B, you have 1C. And there's also a state resource called MASS, Michigan Association of Senior Centers, and they're a great resources for people who live outside of the major city.
Okay, Vincent and Satrice, I really appreciate you being here this evening. And of course, we all appreciate the great work you're doing and what your teams do to serve the community. Thanks so much for being with us.
Thanks for having me.
Okay, in our next segment, we're going to turn our attention to the work of the Solutions Journalism Collaborative and what its journalists have discovered as they've covered caregiving in our community. But first, for a little context, let's hear from Larry McClure, a Detroiter who cares for his 90-year-old mother, Minnie. In this short clip from the Detroit Public TV and Urban Aging News and Report, we get a sense of the daily tasks that face a very diligent caregiver and the big payoff in love and gratitude that he receives.
As Larry's mom, Minnie, sits resting on her couch, he isn't far away. In fact, he lives in the same building she does to make sure he's close by in case she needs him.
Do you need some water for your medicine?
I don't need anything right now.
So Larry uses this time to get on with the day's chores. Cleaning is part of his regular routine of taking care of his mother.
I have to depend on Larry more so now because, see, sometimes when I wake up in the morning time now, if I happen to raise up too quick, then the whole room goes to turning, you know. They say I had a mild stroke at the brain.
But with Larry by her side, just an elevator ride away, she feels comfort knowing she'll be taken care of.
Well, I just thank God for it.
Why is that?
Because if it wasn't for him, I would have to get a stranger, and I don't be wanting strangers around me.
Larry says taking care of his mom keeps him busy.
There's a lot of traveling involved, you know. Bills have to be paid, different doctor's appointments that have to be met.
He's my backbone, I'll put it that way. I couldn't have asked God for a better son.
Okay, so we've got a rather large panel that is joining us now, and I'm going to try to introduce them individually as we turn to their stories. So we don't get too much of a backup going. First, let me welcome Ted Roloffs, who is with Bridge, Michigan, and Sarah Rahal, who is with the Detroit News. And they've been collaborating on a series of stories on caregivers. Ted and Sarah, welcome to the program.
Hey, good to be with you.
Thank you for having us.
So let's start with the issues that affect paid caregivers. Sarah, you and Ted found some really alarming statistics about the current shortage of workers in that profession. The figure you cite is that we need 34,000 more workers right now. And by all predictions, that situation is only going to get worse. So explain what's driving this shortfall and what can be done about it.
Absolutely. This is nothing new. That's the first thing we need to say is this was very much expected and is expected to get much worse. There are thousands in Michigan who are in desperate need. we have advocates who are completely exhausting their resources to get people to understand that this long time shortage has exploded during the pandemic. And especially when you're getting paid $12 to $15 an hour, and Target is probably offering you more, or fast food is offering you more to do one, I don't want to say simple job, but not take on the huge health risks that caregivers do. It's much more appealing to just do that. It's something that they lack transportation to get to, the resources they need for themselves. And it's a job that many spoke to us about feeling very underappreciated. So there is a desperate need. You know, we looked at the statistics, and most caregivers are women in the middle age of, I think it was 55 to 64, and they mostly need help themselves. 35% were receiving food stamps, 34% were living in affordable housing or lacked affordable housing, and then 22 were below the poverty line. Only 11% lacked a high school education. So it just shows us that the people who are giving our elderly care need it for themselves.
Yeah.
And it, yeah.
Yeah. You also found that the turnover rate among these workers is at an all-time high, 82%. I would imagine that a lot of that is about money, that it's just not worth people's time to be paid this little to do this work. But are there some other factors that also contribute to people coming and going out of this work?
I think just from my contact with the people in this profession, it's got to be a combination of the money and the reality of the kind of work that it is. It's difficult. It can be dangerous, especially in COVID. And you hear from these workers, one thing that's a common refrain is we just want to be appreciated and respected. And when you think about it, the work that they do, if it's for a parent that you have, or someday it might be yourself, you think of how critical this care is. And then you look at how, as a society, we are valuing this. And one of the real ways we do that is by pay. So that creates the dilemma. And it comes back on the people who rely on these caregivers, because they oftentimes have multiple caregivers over the course of a year. And for someone in a fragile emotional or health state, that can be even more difficult. You get to know one person, you like that person leaves and someone else comes, and that person you don't get along with. It's very upsetting for an older person. So those are the realities of how this affects people, both the caregivers and the people that are receiving the care.
Sarah, are there some bright spots here? Are there some things that we can look to that suggest we can be doing this better? Is there an effort, for instance, to boost the pay of the people who do this work?
Absolutely. I think we were talking about the turnover rate before, but we didn't talk about what's going to happen 5 years from now. It's going to be a shortage of about 200,000 workers. And we're only getting older, right? So we know that this is going to be an ongoing problem for some time. Right now, there's a boost pay of $2 an hour. I'm not sure if that's still temporarily on hold, but it's seen as a hazard pay. And even before that, before the pandemic, like Ted said, this was a dangerous job. More accidents were happening with home healthcare workers than coal miners or truck drivers. And it's because they have to lift them up. So what I think is going on now, especially in Detroit, what we found was that training programs were reaching out to youth, to younger workers, to say, hey, instead of going to work at McDonald's or fast food, come to us, do something that's meaningful and that you'll get paid to even train for. So that's a bright spot for sure. Ted can definitely talk to some solutions he found nationwide too that might look towards a better bright spot.
Yeah, go ahead, Ted.
Well, we did find this was an interesting and innovative program out in New York City, and I think it's unfortunately not going to be easy to replicate, but this is a nonprofit out of New York City, founded, boy, it's been a while since I did that story, but I think it was at least a couple decades ago. They've created a much more supportive and sustaining environment for their workers. They're better paid, they have better benefits, they have mentors that support them. And as a result, their turnover rate is far less than the national average. Again, to come back to that point, it's kind of simple, but the workers feel valued in many ways. Tangible, money, mentor support. They know their work's important, and they know that the place they're working values them, so they stay with the job. I mean, I think that's pretty easy to understand, and the more we can do that, the more likely people are going to go into the field and stay in the field and be better for the people they're caring for.
Yeah. Ted, I also want to give you a chance to talk about your look at unpaid caregivers. You quote an AARP study that says there are nearly 1.3 million Michiganders, which is more than 10% of the population here, who serve as uncompensated family caregivers for relatives. That situation, you say, is also likely to get worse as the population continues to age.
No question. One number that I found really sobering is the number of people age 75 and older in Michigan is projected to grow by 500,000 in just 20 years. I mean, that's what, from something like 7.5% of the population to 12 or so.
Mm-hmm.
So more people are going to need care. And the way the demographics work, there's fewer people in turn to be taking care of these people as they age. So the burden now is already there for the unpaid caregivers. And really, until I did research for this article and on the scene reporting, I didn't really appreciate the sacrifices that these unpaid caregivers provide. I think the number that's out there is an average, is they spend an average of $7,000 a year themselves. There are resources out there to at least offer some guidance in what to expect. What other resources are out there to help you would certainly help a lot in this issue.
We hope you enjoyed the first half of the Caregivers on the Frontline Public Forum. Tune in next week for part 2. Thank you.